Imagine this. Someone who once had your heart, your trust, your loyalty, suddenly realizes they've lost the best thing they ever had. The shock hits them like a cold wave in the dead of night, and for the first time, they understand the depth of what they threw away. But here's the truth. This story isn't about their regret. It's about you and the moment you finally understand your own power. From the very first day you gave, you were extraordinary. You were patient, compassionate, loving in ways they couldn't comprehend, and they took it for granted. They assumed your loyalty was endless, your patience unshakable, your heart indestructible. And maybe, for a while, you believed that too. Maybe you tolerated their ego, forgave their mistakes, and held space for someone who never held space for you. But every soul has a breaking point, every heart has a limit, and every story has a turning point. That turning point is when you realize you are worth more than their chaos, more than their manipulation, more than their inability to see the gift that you were. And the moment you step into that truth is the moment everything changes, not just for you, but for them. Because they believed they had control. They believed they could bend your heart to their will. They believed you would always stay, always forgive, always give. But you're not theirs to keep. You're yours to honor. You're the one who decides how to love, how to heal, and how to rise. And rising is the most powerful thing you can do. Rising doesn't come with noise, drama, or revenge. It comes with dignity, clarity, and the quiet confidence that your worth has never depended on their recognition. So listen closely, because this is more than a story about someone realizing what they lost. This is a story about remembering who you are, reclaiming the love you give to yourself, and discovering a power they will never understand. By the time this video ends, you won't just know their loss, you'll feel your own strength, your own freedom, and your own unstoppable light. This is your moment, your story, your power, and it begins right now. The moment a narcissist realizes your value is never loud or dramatic, it's subtle, delayed, and often arrives when you've already outgrown the version of yourself they once exploited. This realization does not come while you're still trying, still giving, still hoping they'll finally see you. It arrives only after you stop, after the silence settles, after your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. That is when the truth hits them like a slow-burning shock, creeping into their mind piece by piece. Narcissists don't experience loss the way you do. They don't feel sadness when they hurt you, and they don't reflect when they cause damage. But when you leave, when the supply they depended on disappears, a strange emptiness forms inside them. At first, they brush it off, assuming you'll come back like you always did. They're confident in your loyalty, almost certain of your return. But when that return never comes, when the calls stay unanswered, when the messages stay unread, when your life moves forward without needing their validation, that's the moment the realization begins. Your silence exposes everything your presence once protected them from. It forces them to confront the truth that they misjudged you, underestimated you, and mishandled a heart that would have done anything for them. They replay memories, not out of love, but out of loss. Loss of the power, attention, comfort, and emotional stability you once brought into their life. They begin to understand that what they thought was ordinary was actually extraordinary. The person they treated as replaceable becomes the person they can't replace. And that realization doesn't just hurt their ego, it shatters it. Because deep down, they know they didn't lose you by accident. They lost you because they never learned how to appreciate the very thing they always needed. Your strength was never just a personality trait. It was the emotional backbone of the relationship, the silent force that kept everything from collapsing. Narcissists thrive on chaos, insecurity, and emotional dependency, but they also crave the stability they themselves cannot create. And that stability came from you. Your kindness wasn't softness. It was the type of strength that holds families together, solves problems quietly, and forgives more than it should. Your empathy wasn't a weakness. It was the rare ability to understand emotions they couldn't even acknowledge. Your loyalty was not naive. It was a reflection of the depth of your character. You became their safe place without ever receiving safety in return. They relied on your emotional intelligence, your patience, and your ability to clean up the messes they left behind. They depended on your resilience to recover from their outbursts, your compassion to soothe their insecurity, and your consistency to anchor their instability. You were the quiet healer in a relationship built on imbalance. And though they never admitted it, you were their lifeline, the emotional oxygen that kept their ego alive. But narcissists confuse emotional nourishment with entitlement. They assume your strength is infinite and your support automatic. They never consider the weight you carry or the exhaustion hidden behind your smile. They take and take, believing you exist to fill the voids they refuse to face. It's only after you leave, when the calm disappears, when problems no longer magically resolve themselves, when emotional chaos is no longer met with your steady presence, that they realize your strength was never ordinary. It was the one thing that made their life function. And in that moment of clarity, they understand that losing you wasn't just losing a partner, it was losing the only source of stability they ever had. The loss of someone like you never hits a narcissist immediately. At first, they feel nothing, no sadness, no regret, no awareness. Their ego shields them, convincing them they're fine without you, convincing them they can replace you easily, convincing them that you were the one who needed them. But this illusion doesn't last. It begins to crack slowly, quietly, in the subtle corners of their life where your presence used to bring comfort and certainty. When they reach for attention and it's not there, when they seek validation and no one offers it with the depth you once did, when their chaos is no longer met with your calming energy, that's when the reality starts creeping in. The loss doesn't slam into them all at once. It drips in moment by moment. They begin to notice the silence first, the absence of your messages, the lack of your reassurance, the void where your emotional warmth used to exist. They realize the world feels colder without the comfort they took for granted. They start comparing every new person to you, searching for the emotional richness they only experienced with you. And with each failed attempt to fill that void, the truth becomes harder to avoid. They remember how you understood their moods before they spoke, how you stayed loyal even when they pushed you away, how your presence gave them a sense of control, validation, and identity. Without you, their life becomes a loop of temporary highs and emotional crashes, because what you gave them was not superficial. It was stability, compassion, and genuine connection. And when they accept that what they lost cannot be replaced, the regret arrives, not because they suddenly learn to love, but because they feel the weight of losing someone who made their life easier, softer, and more meaningful than they ever admitted. Your healing is the one thing the narcissist never prepares for, because in their mind, you are supposed to stay wounded, unsure, and dependent on their approval. They expect you to remain stuck in the same emotional maze they created. But when you begin to rise, slowly, quietly, and powerfully, your growth becomes their greatest discomfort. Narcissists don't just lose control when you heal, they lose the version of you that made them feel superior, and that loss haunts them more than they will ever admit. Your healing forces them to face truths they've avoided their entire life. When you start setting boundaries they can't cross, when you choose your peace over their chaos, when you no longer react to their manipulation, their ego begins to crack. They notice the glow in your eyes returning, the confidence in your voice strengthening, the freedom in your energy expanding. Every step you take forward reminds them of the emotional damage they caused, and every moment you rise becomes a silent mirror showing them what they destroyed. What hurts them most isn't that you left, it's that you're becoming someone stronger than the version they tried to break. The more you grow, the smaller they feel. The more you shine, the darker their regret becomes. Narcissists depend on your pain to sustain their power. So when you heal, you remove their fuel. And without fuel, they collapse into their own emptiness. Your healing also exposes their patterns in a way they can't escape. They realize you now see through every tactic, every lie, every manipulation. They no longer have access to the heart they once controlled. That loss becomes their haunting. They replay moments where they could have chosen kindness but chose ego instead, where they could have valued you but chose dominance. And while they remain stuck in the shadows of their own choices, you walk into a life filled with clarity, strength, and self-respect. Your healing becomes proof that you were always the powerful one, and that realization is the one thing they can never outrun. A narcissist's greatest mistake is believing you will never leave. They become so accustomed to your forgiveness, your patience, your willingness to understand that they start to believe your loyalty is permanent and unconditional. In their mind, your love is not a choice, it's an obligation. They assume you will always be there to absorb their moods, tolerate their disrespect, and fix the emotional messes they create. Over time, they confuse your compassion with dependency and your endurance with weakness. They build their entire sense of power on the assumption that you won't walk away. What they never consider is the strength hidden inside the quietest hearts. You were never staying because you couldn't leave. You were staying because you hoped, believed, and cared. But the moment your spirit decided enough was enough, the dynamic shifted. Narcissists don't see the warnings, the emotional exhaustion, or the internal breaking point. They see only the parts of you that serve them, not the parts of you that are dying inside. So when you finally pull back, detach, and walk away with calm certainty, it shocks them more than any argument ever could. They believe their manipulation was stronger than your clarity. They believed their control was stronger than your self-respect, but they underestimated the power of a person who has finally seen the truth. When you leave, not in anger but with dignity, it disrupts their entire illusion of superiority. They realize too late that your presence wasn't guaranteed. It was a privilege. The absence they thought they could handle becomes unbearable. They expected you to return, to chase, to reattach. But when that doesn't happen, when your silence remains firm and your peace grows louder, they are forced to confront something they never imagined. You left because you found strength they never believed you had. In that moment, they realized they didn't lose someone weak. They lost someone who finally remembered their worth. What makes you the best they ever had isn't just what you did, it's who you were at your core. Narcissists attach themselves to people who carry qualities they lack: empathy, emotional depth, integrity, stability, and the kind of love that feels like home. You didn't love halfway. You loved with intention, with sincerity, with heart. You listened deeply, cared genuinely, and showed up consistently. You supported them through storms they created and offered compassion even when they didn't deserve it. To them, this felt normal. To you, it was natural, but to the world, it's rare, and that rarity becomes painfully clear to them only after you're gone. Narcissists confuse attention with love, but what you gave wasn't attention. It was emotional nourishment. It was the kind of loyalty that doesn't waver, the kind of understanding that makes another person feel seen, the kind of softness that heals wounds they never acknowledge. You brought meaning into their shallow world without asking for anything extraordinary in return, except honesty and reciprocity, which they could never offer. Only after they lose you do they realize the depth of what you gave. They notice how other people don't tolerate their moods the way you did, how no one else reads their emotions before they speak, how others pull away instead of leaning in the way you always did. They begin to understand that the love you offered was not common. It was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of love, rooted in purity and strength. They search for replacements, but every new person feels temporary, surface level, insufficient. That's when the truth sinks in. You were the one who made them feel important, understood, and emotionally safe. You were the one who brought color to their monotone life. You were the one who loved with depth, not convenience. And once they realized that what they lost was not just supply but a genuine heart, the regret becomes unbearable because they finally understand they will never experience that kind of love again. Your comeback is the moment that changes everything, not just for you, but for the narcissist who once believed they had complete control over your story. When you finally choose yourself, your peace, your healing, your growth, you create a shift so powerful that it forces them to face the truth they've been avoiding. They expected you to crumble without them. They imagined you stuck, waiting, hurting, and longing for closure. But instead, you rise. You rebuild the pieces of yourself they tried to break, and in that rebuilding, you become stronger than you've ever been. Your comeback is not loud, it's steady. It's the quiet confidence that returns to your voice, the glow in your spirit that they tried to dim, the boundaries you now enforce with certainty. It's the life you begin to build that has nothing to do with them. New dreams, new connections, new inner peace. Every step you take forward becomes a reminder of the power they underestimated. Every moment you thrive becomes a mirror reflecting the damage they caused and the strength you found to overcome it. What hurts them most is that your growth proves that they were never the source of your happiness. You were. Your recovery reveals that the version of you they manipulated was not your final form, but your wounded form. The healed version of you exposes their failure, their limitations, and the truth that they never held real power over you. And while they remain stuck in old patterns, you evolve into someone wiser, bolder, and emotionally untouchable. Your comeback becomes the chapter they can't rewrite, the lesson they can't escape, and the proof that you were always the powerful one in the story. They may regret losing you, but your rise shows the world that your life didn't end with them. It began after them. There comes a point in every powerful story where the pain turns into wisdom, the heartbreak becomes clarity, and the person who once questioned their worth finally stands in the truth of who they really are. And this is the moment your audience has been waiting for, the moment where everything changes. Because the real victory in your journey was never about making the narcissist regret losing you. The real victory was you finding yourself again. When you walked away, you weren't just leaving a relationship, you were leaving a version of yourself that accepted less than you deserved. You were walking toward the life you were meant to live, the life where your voice matters, where your peace is protected, and where your heart is finally treated with the care it always gave others. And as you rebuild, something remarkable happens. The world starts to see what the narcissist never appreciated. People recognize your strength, your character, your kindness, and your resilience. Your story becomes more than survival. It becomes transformation. Your audience needs to feel that. They need to feel the moment you realized your power wasn't lost. It was simply buried under the weight of someone who couldn't see your value. They need to feel the shift when you stopped trying to prove your worth and started living it. And they need to feel the truth that your healing wasn't just a recovery, it was a rebirth. The narcissist may look back one day and feel the sting of losing someone extraordinary, but that's not your ending. Your ending is the freedom you gained, the confidence you rebuilt, and the peace you now protect fiercely. Your ending is the life you're creating, the one filled with self-respect, purpose, clarity, and people who appreciate the depth of your heart. So let your audience walk away with this message. You are not defined by who hurt you. You are defined by who you become after the pain. You are proof that walking away is not weakness. It's the beginning of wisdom. You are proof that healing is possible, that self-love is powerful, and that reclaiming your life is the greatest comeback of all. Leave them with the reminder that the story doesn't end when the narcissist realizes your worth. The story begins when you finally realize it.